My talk's really about the Olympic Park from a sense of the narrative it's helped give our profession. And I think it is. I think Peter Neal's quote's great actually, and I think it is. I think it was a landmark project. And I'm not going to talk about specific projects. You'd be disappointed that I'm going to talk about the Garden Bridge, I'm sure. But I think what it did help was give our profession a narrative along the lines of green infrastructure, multifunctional design and all of those sorts of things. I'm actually going to start a long time ago. I joined Arup in 1990. Some of you probably weren't even born then. But my Olympic Park journey actually started in 1991 with the High Speed 1 project. And people may not know this, but the original High Speed 1 route went down the south of London. It went tunnelled through its way through the south of London and then turned in an eastward direction. And what my firm did, we proposed independently proposed an eastern alignment for High Speed 1. And this was actually adopted by the government of the time, and eventually, you know, it went forward and was constructed. And what High Speed 1 did was two very important things. The first, it established an international station at Stratford, so it instantly gave Stratford a status. And a lot of the excavated material from the High Speed 1 works was used to create developable land. So in other words, lift the land off the floodplain, and suddenly you had this economic opportunity in the area. And you know, these events were important because they helped contribute towards the Olympic Park bid, which was in 2002, and it really helped Stratford to become chosen as the Olympic Park venue. And I actually worked on the High Speed 1 for I think quite a few years, and I was just sort of kind of finishing off, and then suddenly the Olympic Park started, so I just went a bit further west and started work on this amazing project that we've seen. And I have to say it was quite daunting actually when you realise, and you've seen Phil's terrible slides of the original site as well. But you know, we're talking about going from this to this in, you know, less than 6-7 years, and knowing that there's going to be 4 billion people looking at your project. I think one of the worst things was that on the post office tower, they used to have, is it called the post office tower now? I don't know. I call it the post office tower. You know, BT tower, yes. They used to have the deadline, so it would say 300 days to go, and then the next day 200. You know, so that wasn't very good for the nerves. So I think the team, as I say, the Olympic Park project was an amazing collaboration, and I think. I also think the LDA team was a very interesting makeup with your specialists, your soil specialists, and meadow specialists, garden design specialists. And I think that's something that's really influenced us in the way that we do our projects in the future, that we have larger teams, and we have teams which are much more specialised, but teams which we as landscape architects are good at orchestrating, that's been mentioned, and pulling together to actually get the best results. And I think that's where... just on the Olympic Park, my firm was involved in many areas of the Olympic Park. We have had over 1,000 people in our firm involved in the project. We're still involved in the project. And when I first joined Arup, I was the only landscape architect, so it was me at the time and 3,000 engineers. It's now 12,000 actually, but we've got considerably more landscape architects. I haven't quite caught them up yet. But the landscape engineering role's been mentioned, and this was actually a very interesting role. So we sucked some of those people out, and we created this landscape engineering team. So this is a team of engineers, principally, and a specialist team, very like the LDA team, a team of specialists with a very clear role, and that was to develop the design intent, the LDA team's design intent. We did the detailed design for the hard, and then we coordinated the planning packages, working closely all the time with the teams, and then taking that all the way through to construction. And did the engineers like being led by a landscape architect? No, they didn't, actually. They really didn't. They couldn't understand it. They said, "Why are you leading this team? What's going on?" And they thought it should be led by a nice engineer with some grey hair and things, and a grey suit probably. And so, you know, I had a difficult task. And then when Andrew's team came along with all these design changes, complex design changes, after they'd been working for months, working out levels and things, and then we suddenly had to change things, and I was having to go and hide a few times, you know, so it wasn't easy. But in the end, we won them round. You'll be glad to know. And I think one of the sort of real tasks was the coordination. And this is just part of the South Park here. And I think what landscape architects are good at, and one thing I really learnt from this project, was it's all about edges and interfaces, how your project hits the next project. And of course, the Olympic Park had all these massive projects on the go, the stadium, the aquatics, water polo, you can see them all up there. We had warm-up tracks, we had greenway, loop roads, we had 18 bridges. And there were a lot of design teams working on these, and they were focusing on that little project. So they weren't interested in our park. Of course, our park had to weave its way through with the biggest single project on the park, the public realm and landscape. And so we interface with each of these projects. So at each of these sort of edges, you know, we had decisions to make. They all had their own ideas about levels, about materials, about design. And to make a single park, we had to really think, get this right so it doesn't, that's it. So we had to really think about what happens at these edges. How do we make one park? And at the same time, we were also coordinating with Tim's Atkins North Park landscape engineering team as well. So a hugely complex task. And as I say, engineers are great at focusing on their little bit, but it was really the landscape architect that could really stand back, look at what are we trying to achieve here? What's the quality of the finished product? How are we going to make things work on the surface? And thinking about things like utilities, and then having to go and have these terrible meetings with these utility companies saying, you're going to have to move that utility there because we want a tree avenue up through here and we can't do it without you know, and then, you know, you can imagine what it's like, can't you? So a lot of it was, you know, extremely hard work. And I have to say, the only way that Olympic Park got done was through persistence and determination and a willingness to achieve. And also, I think, as I said before, it's the collaboration between all of these different consultants all working really well together. And I have to say, landscape architects are very good at working with each other. So I think it was actually quite an achievement to get there in the end. And as I said, I think it really showed you that landscape-led design works. You know, it's successful. And I think in the end, I did have lots of engineers come up saying, we actually understand why you were there now. And they understand that we think differently. We're thinking, standing back, thinking of a much bigger picture and thinking differently to the way that they're thinking. Because obviously, they're thinking of the problems and they're thinking of the way things are put together and the intricacies of what they do, whereas we can stand back and focus on the quality of the product. And as I said, you know, we're great orchestrators of teams. When we were working on the project, I think no one actually mentioned the park. People were talking about the stadium, they're talking about the aquatics and the velodrome, etc. I mean, all beautiful buildings and amazing things. But then actually when the park opened, all I ever heard was about the park, and the media were full of stories about the park and the flower meadows, and everybody was actually talking about public realm, everybody was talking about landscape. And I think that was really significant actually. And this huge response to a well-designed public realm, I think was extremely significant. And I have to say, you know, it really was universal acclaim, not just from the media, but from professionals, even architects. But most importantly, I think the public. And I had so many emails, I'm sure all you guys and girls did as well, just sort of congratulating, saying that the mothers thought it was absolutely marvellous and the granny loved it and all of these sort of things. But I think that's important. You know, it's important for a project to have such universal appeal. And as I say, I think our involvement on the project really got us thinking. And in a way, this was an extremely important project for me in the development of our landscape business. And like Andrew, you know, we've certainly benefited from the involvement and the sort of the whole success of it. And we wanted to build on the success of the project. And so what I really wanted to do was two things. First of all, was to raise the profile within my company, and we successfully did this with just simply being in charge of a team of engineers. Meant that people knew who we were, they knew what we did, and they saw the results of what we did. And I think that was really important. So now we lead projects in our firm far more than we ever used to, and people aren't, you know, taken aback anymore like they first were. So you know, that's an important thing. Nobody flinches when we're put forward as team leaders. The second thing, I wanted to raise the profile of landscape architecture generally. So what we did, we kind of like looked back at the significance of the park. Again, standing back, looking at the bigger picture. And what the park really does, it provides this important new piece of green infrastructure in London. It's part of this All London Green Grid, which we see here, which is, a huge asset for London, protecting London and creating a quality city. And if we look into this a bit further, the benefits, I suppose in a way, it's really about the power of landscape, isn't it? And it's the power of landscape to deliver far more than just the aesthetic, which is important, but it's probably traditionally what people think we do. But there's so much more benefit here. There's a social benefit, encouraging social interaction, encouraging health, encouraging people to take exercise, encouraging people to play and develop and do all these things, and providing real spaces for people and real spaces for the community, which we've seen really nicely on the slide so far. It's also an economic benefit as well, huge economic benefits. The park is driving the entire economic redevelopment of that area. It's the centrepiece for the whole economic renaissance of that area. And from an environmental point of view, this multifunctional design, flood protection, biodiversity, all of these things which bring huge benefits for people. So in a way, that kind of narrative, that green infrastructure narrative, is something that we've really taken on board in the firm and pushed forward with. And it's really the Olympic Park that gave us that confidence and that kind of started that whole thought process about what actually is landscape architecture and what actually can we do for people and what advantages we can bring. And we know that these are huge, and this all emerged as a project we did, and which I have to say was extremely well supported by the Landscape Institute, and thank you very much for that. We got some great comments, support, and Sue wrote the foreword, and you helped with a lot of the drafts. And this really promotes the whole role of green infrastructure, particularly in urban areas where we're seeing massive increases in population. And it presents lots of global research on environmental benefits, economic benefits, social benefits. And we launched this, and I have to say the reaction to it has been quite extraordinary, really. We got national newspaper coverage, even the Daily Mail reported on it. We got international coverage, all sorts of magazines, all sorts of blogs, a C40 blog. We've been on the TV, we've been on the radio. And I think that's really helped define, I'm pleased because it's helped define our profession and show people the real value of what landscape architecture can be. And it's not just about aesthetics, it's actually about all these other things, the social, economic and environmental benefits. So that was about raising sort of profile of landscape architecture generally, but also I was also asked internally in my firm, I was asked by our chair to present this at our Arup annual general meeting. This is a sort of once every 3 years because we have so many people, all these offices, 12,000 people. They don't all come to one meeting, by the way. But so I had to present it to the directors from all over the world. And I was very proud of that. I mean, it was only a 10-minute presentation, but I thought, well, this is great. This is sort of landscape architecture arriving in a big engineering multidisciplinary firm. And and it was a great opportunity. So I think the two things I set out to do, I think, really did work. But I have to say, it was the Olympic Park project and the way that was done that's really sort of helped push that. So that's my talk. Thank you very much.